Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. If you're new here, I'm Lindy. I love to read, and that's what I'm doing on this channel. I'm talking about books. But before I get to those, I'll just fill you in a little bit on what's been going on with me outside of reading. I finally finished knitting this hat for my sweetie. It is supposed to look like text on a page. She is a former journalist, so thought that would be appropriate. And I made a pom-pom for the top, and Lori categorically refused to have a pom-pom on her toque. So I made a second pom-pom, and I've added them to the ends of this scarf that I've got on right now. So, pom-pom story. I got this book, Make Your Own Cute and Easy Pom-Poms, from the sale rack at Russell Books when they had Independent Bookstore Day last month. This is by 4 Japanese creators. It was translated from Japanese by Kevin Wilson. There's not a lot of text in it, and occasionally I've already noticed that there's some errors because it has both millimeters and inches, and sometimes those don't correspond at all. So I've got to watch for that. But the designs really are cute. So here's some examples in here. Those apples. Yeah, some very elaborate designs. So the main text author is Kazue Kasuga, and she says that she was inspired or influenced by seeing pom-pom headdresses when she was doing some work in Hungary. So that's where all of this came from. And that inspired me to go on the internet and find out more about these traditional headgear. And I found some gorgeous illustrations and photographs. And I probably will be making more pom-poms. I really want to try those apple ones. Yeah. Let me know if you are also a pom-pom fan. Pom-pom on your toque? Yay or nay? Last weekend, when I was waiting in line at the bakery, I could see something happening across the street at the local community center. A long lineup of people over there. So I went over to find out what was going on, and it was a free giveaway from the city of Victoria of vegetable plant starts. So I got some. I got basil and green onions and cucumbers, collard greens, kale, lettuce, yellow wax beans. So I put them in pots on my deck to keep them safe from deer that come wandering through the yard. I do have some herbs and some vegetables that I've started from seed in pots on the ground level of this garden. And we'll see if the deer find them or not. I don't know. So that is my gardening report. Oh no, I wanted to say that I chose to sit here because the lilacs are just finishing, and I thought, might as well let you see those as well. Okay, on to the books. Still continuing with the group read of Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. And once again, there are ties to another book that I'm reading. And in this case, it's Small Ceremonies by Kyle Edwards. This book had a waiting list and I had to return it to the library, so I'll pop in a picture here. Kyle Edwards is an Anishnaabe journalist. This is his debut novel, and it is set in Winnipeg in 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. It's during the Idle No More justice movement that was happening here in Canada, all about Indigenous rights and sovereignty. And so Aboriginal sovereignty is one of the ties into Praiseworthy, and the other tie is a central character in Small Ceremonies, a boy named Tomahawk. Praiseworthy has a character, a boy named Tomahawk as well. And an additional tie is that these young Indigenous people are surviving in a world that doesn't want them to exist. Okay, so in Small Ceremonies, this is a novel that's told from multiple points of view, but two of the central characters are Tommy and his friend Clinton, and they're in their final year of high school. They live in the north end of Winnipeg, which is a poor, mainly Indigenous area, and they're on this hockey team called the Tigers. And the novel follows them over the course of a year, culminating in the final game of the season that the Tigers are playing. And there's much about this book that reminds me of Tommy Orange's novel, They're There. So if you enjoyed that, I strongly recommend that you pick up Small Ceremonies. One of the characters in here is a journalist. She's a student at the high school, the same high school that Tommy and Clinton are at. And here's a little bit from her section that really struck me. One article on the internet said journalists have to be impartial, that they couldn't be angry or driven by emotion or bias. And after reading that, she wondered if maybe journalism wasn't for her. But her mother said, that just means there aren't enough angry reporters. Right on, Mom. Tommy has a sister, Asama, who's usually known as Sam, and she's in university and she's applying to be a Rhodes Scholar. And there is a section in there where she talks about her awareness that Cecil Rhodes was a raging racist. So what does that mean to be connected with his name? But on the other hand, she could really use the money and the prestige of this scholarship. And it reminded me that the Indigenous Canadian writer Billy Ray Belcourt is also a Rhodes Scholar. So another thing about Sam is she is totally health obsessed. And the reason behind this is she's been affected by endless social media posts that pronounced if you were native, then you were either diabetic or pre-diabetic, which is another tie to Praiseworthy, actually, because media has very much affected a particular young character, Tommy, in Praiseworthy. There's so many important issues that are raised, looked at in different ways in this novel, like multiple ways of identifying yourself. So there are treaty versus non-status Indigenous people. There are Indigenous people with res ties versus others who are totally urban, don't have reservation ties. Racism is definitely an issue in here. Also, dysfunctional families and families that don't fit the nuclear norm. There's one of the characters who's worried that his friend might have killed himself, and he thinks briefly about calling the police, but he says, around here, wellness checks kill more than they save. Very sad reality. I was really impressed and wrapped up in this novel. It's very good. One of the things I noticed, though, is that the font was so small. It's 368 pages long, and there are 37 lines of text on each page with not a lot of white space. If it would have had a larger font and more white space, the book itself would have been much chunkier. So perhaps that's why McClelland and Stewart, the publisher, decided to go with this book design. I'm going to compare it to other books that have the same trim size. So here it is next to Art Thieves, which I'll be reading next week. And Art Thieves has got 30 lines of text on a page. And a book that I'm going to be telling you about later in this video is Run Away With Me, which has 28 lines of text on a page, even though the font is pretty much the same height. I find it much more legible because of the white space around it. Sonia, from An Enthusiastic Reader, is a book designer. So Sonia, if you're watching this, I would love your input. Next up, I've got a couple of books by Asian authors. May is Asian Heritage Month in Canada, and there was an article on the CBC 28 Canadian titles to read during Asian Heritage Month and beyond. And there were so many great titles on here that I'm going to share that link below. Some of them I have already talked about on this channel, like Sachi Cole's Sucker Punch, The River Has Roots by Amal El Multar, We Speak Through the Mountain by Premi Mohammed, and Catfish Rolling by Clara Kumagai, and one that I am currently reading, The Book of Records by Madeline Teen, and this next one that I'm going to be telling you about that I hadn't heard of until I saw it in this list. So one of the many reasons why I'm grateful for book lists, A Palace Near the Wind by Jiang. The author is Chinese Canadian, originally from Fujian in China. And in this novella, we are dropped right into the middle of a Chinese-influenced fantasy world, and we are in the first-person voice of Lu Feng, who is a windwalker. She's a kind of tree-like non-human. We learn that instead of blood, she has sap. Instead of skin, she has bark. Instead of hair, she has needle threads. And then she's got something that doesn't really translate to human, and that is trichomes on her skin, which on plants are these little sort of hair-like appendages. So the story opens with arrangements being made for Lu Feng's marriage to a king in a palace that's not part of her world, that she's known her whole life. And we experience her bewilderment once she's there in the palace, just getting used to everything that is so different from what she's known before. She's interacting with other non-humans and humans alike. such interesting commentary on propaganda and altered texts, and how quickly we can become accustomed to comforts that then we don't want to give up. This ends in a bit of a cliffhanger. It was satisfying to me, but I am quite sure that Jiang is going to be writing more about, what happens next in this world. Next, I have another Asian Canadian. This one is a memoir by a queer Muslim Canadian-born daughter of Iranian immigrants. It's called All the Parts We Exile, and it's by Roza Nozari. The author is a social worker. There is a Tim Hortons reference in here to add to my collection. In this memoir, she tells us that when she was younger, she did not consider Canada home, even though she was born here. She unequivocally thought of Iran as home. There's a lot in here about her relationship with her mother that I really enjoyed. She also talks about Farsi phrases. So, for example, there's one that's commonly used around food, and it translates as, "May your soul be nourished." Isn't that lovely? And there's another one that's used. If you sit with your back to someone, you always apologize. And then there's a standard response to that, which is, "A flower has no front and back." The whole cultural aspect of apologizing comes up in here, because at one point she has a housemate who is really offended or upset by how much Roza apologizes. Interesting to think about. Roza talks about the hijab and how that headscarf in itself isn't oppressive to women. However, the way it's used by the theocratic government in Iran is oppressive. That it's a mechanism of control. Something that seems to come up often in memoirs that I've been reading lately is a description of how we can tell and retell a horrific experience. So in Roza's case, it was a rape. And for her, it eventually became a date night comical anecdote. This is what she says about being queer. For some of us, our arrival into queerness doesn't begin with agony and otherness. It begins with quiet tenderness, so quiet you might miss it if you aren't paying attention. I felt unprepared to do queerness. And she talks a lot about feeling like she had to choose identities, Muslim versus queerness, belonging versus selfhood, wanting to feel like her whole self around her family, but really fearful, worried that she might not be able to return home again, the very real danger of being openly queer in Iran. She talks about the relief in attending a welcoming mosque, where one of the things that they're told is that they can define modesty for themselves, and there are no rules around modest dressing when you're attending the services there. One of the things that happens to Roza's mother is she divorces and remarries and moves back to Iran, but then her mother tells her that she experiences not fitting in anymore, even though she didn't leave there until she was an adult. But one of the things that she'd become accustomed to in Canada was reliable access to the internet. And, that ties back to the novel, A Palace Near the Wind, and how we get used to our creature comforts. One of the things that Roza says in this memoir, which, by the way, I didn't mention that she reads the audiobook. Always love to hear the author read their own memoir. So she says, we can't be in two places at one time. So there's always something we are leaving behind. There's always some degree of grief. And that's a good tie to the next book I want to tell you about, because in this one, there is an impending departure, and that is going to bring grief, sadness to the individuals. I'm talking about Run Away With Me by Brian Selznick, who is a gay American author and illustrator. You might know him for the book, The Invention of Hugo Cabret. He also illustrated the book Live Oak with Moss, which is definitely an adult book. It's the 12 intensely personal poems that Walt Whitman wrote about his affection and attraction to other men. Most of Brian's novels are suitable for YA or kids even, like The Invention of Hugo Cabret. He has a hybrid sort of style in which he has pages of illustration that don't have any text at all, and then other pages that are just text, which is what he uses in here. One of his earlier books, Wonderstruck, would be perfect for the Spoonies Readathon, which is the disabilities awareness readathon that is hosted by Emily of Novell Novels and Kat of Brews and Reviews. I will link their channels below. So Wonderstruck, the portions of the book that are told in pictures only are from the viewpoint of a girl who's deaf. And then there's another character who's there in the text portion of it. And yeah, it works so well in there. I didn't realize when I picked up Run Away With Me that this one is also a book that fits within the theme of a disability readathon. But I can't tell you more about that because it would be a spoiler. Only know that not all disabilities are visible. So this book is set in Rome in 1986. It is just over the course of one summer where a fatherless American boy is there because his mother is working on the preservation of books. And the boy who's 16 meets another teenage boy, an Italian one, and they fall deeply in love with each other. and it's a first time for both of them. And this first love feeling is evoked just so well in this novel. It's beautiful. And I say that being somebody who normally is not drawn to romance, but this is also one where the feelings they do feel so real. And yeah, loved it. So I told you it's 1986, so this is at the start of the AIDS crisis, and that comes up in the book. There are Italian newspaper headlines about how gay men and drug users are dying of AIDS. And this brings me to a tangent. So at the end of this month, Laurie and I are going to be traveling to Edmonton for a big birthday party. And for that, Laurie was going through boxes of old photos. So she found this one of the time that we were at an AIDS fundraising gala. This was in the mid-90s. So much younger then. And there's also a passage in this book that's about a time capsule. Given the rusty chains and dirty glass, the place seemed to have been shut for many months. Perhaps the owner had died suddenly. I didn't know, but it was like a little time capsule had accidentally been created when the store was locked up. And the other event that we are going to Edmonton for is to open a time capsule that we contributed to New Year's Eve, 1999. Laurie and I hosted a big party, and all the women there brought stuff for this time capsule. It's been in a Rubbermaid container, and what we're going to do is open it up and see what's in there. I cannot remember at all what I put in. And we'll also have to decide what we're going to do with this stuff. But anyway, it's just one of the neat serendipities happening in connection with this book. So, you know how music is a lifeline for many young people, and it's no exception for the boy in here. But this is back in the days where you used a cassette recorder and recorded songs off the radio. And that was me in the early 80s. I did that. So it was really a trip back in time for me too. Trees may look like they're always standing still, but I'd read somewhere they just live in a different type of time than we do. If you filmed a tree over hundreds of years, then sped up the film, not only would you see it growing, but the bark on the trunk would be swirling and flowing just like water. Trees are in a constant state of movement, even if you can't see it. That's me, I thought. On the outside, it may look like I was lying perfectly still on the couch, but on the inside, I was writhing. Ooh, teenage angst. So this is very much a character-based novel, and the wide-ranging thoughts that are going through the mind of this main character. And the lyrical prose, too. One of the passages that I flagged, I realized, is also right here on the back of the book. We turned hand in hand and fell off the edge of the world into the dark, wild abyss of Rome. So this is a YA novel, but it definitely has a lot of adult crossover appeal. There are queer male couples in here that we see across time. And in the author's acknowledgments at the end, he talks about a very new project. It's a nonprofit organization. Queer was always here. It's ongoing. It's celebrating queerness throughout history while working to build better futures for LGBTQIA+ people around the world. I did go look for their website, which is currently under construction. Definitely something to watch. There were so many rabbit holes I went down. The poetry of John Keats, the map making of Piranesi, which you also see in the end papers. There's Rome, Piranesi's Rome. That's great. So this next book is coming to us from Australia. I listened to the audio of 3 Wild Dogs and the Truth, a memoir by Markus Zusak. And the audiobook is read by the author. So he's the author of The Book Thief also. You probably have read that or certainly are aware of it. You might not know that that book was originally released for an adult audience in Australia, and then the publisher had 2 covers, one aimed at younger readers and one aimed at adults, although in North America was primarily promoted towards teen audiences. His next book after that was Bridge of Clay. I'm going to have to move inside. Now there's a lawnmower and an airplane. I'll finish this indoors. Okay. Right. So where was I at? This is what Markus Zusak has to say about the Bridge of Clay. That it was finally published. For 13 years, I had fought for the world championship of myself writing that book, and it showed. Where The Book Thief was a tremendous effort that appeared to have been effortless, Bridge of Clay demanded dedication from its reader. Sure, it suited Clay, my protagonist, whose struggle was big and beautiful, but it couldn't suit absolutely everyone. It's much better than The Book Thief in many ways, and the people who love it are special to me. When we talk about it after a library or bookshop event, I'll say it's not a book for weaklings, and we'll trade a collegial smile, which is not to say I think it's that hard going. It's not Ulysses, for Christ's sake, but it's different. It's itself. And again, it bears reminding that books, like dogs, owe us nothing. It's worth it for having done it. So in this memoir, Markus writes about 3 troublesome rescue dogs that he and his family have had. And these dogs have definitely been a part of the family. They started out with cats, though, and when he talked to people about the problems they were having with these cats, that they were marking their territory in the house, some people would say, well, just get rid of those cats. And Markus and his family are not the kind of people who just get rid of a member of the family if they've got behavior that's problematic. These dogs, once they were trained and used to living in this family, were basically good dogs. He says things were fine for 364 days of the year, but God help you on the 365th. On that day, he was like the friend who shakes up a can of soft drink and opens it in your face. One of the people that he talks about is his children's piano teacher and her interactions with the dogs. And she is the glorious Lindy. So I love encountering Lindys in books. I think this pretty much sums up his feelings. He says, I loved those dogs so much, and it came back to me in spades each day. If you love dogs, you'll get a lot out of this for sure. So from Australia to New Zealand, this next memoir is by the New Zealander Sarah Wynn-Williams. It is Careless People, a cautionary tale of power, greed, and lost idealism. The audiobook is read by the author. So she spent 6 years, from 2011 to 2017, as a policymaker in upper management at Facebook, now Meta. And Meta has tried to quash the publication of this. They don't come off well in her memoir, let's put it that way. In March of 2025, there was an emergency ruling in the US to temporarily stop Sarah from promoting or distributing this book because Facebook says she's breached an agreement that she signed when she left Facebook, of an agreement that there'd be no disparagement. But it is on New York Times list of top books of 2025 so far. I want to thank booktuber Greg of Supposedly Fun for going through this list on his channel, because I don't have a subscription to the New York Times, and I could get access through various methods, but it's a lot of trouble, and having a booktuber go through and also give their thoughts is always a pleasure. So thank you, Greg, for that. I think it deserves its place on this best books list. The editors at the New York Times are talking about books that we can't stop thinking and talking about. There's so much in here. It is confounding and shocking, and not just the Facebook stuff, although there's a lot of that, but it starts with a shark attack that Sarah experienced when she was 13 years old in New Zealand. And there's some other big medical challenges as well for her. But she talks about how during the earthquake in Christchurch, where her family is from, by this point she's in the US, and she was able to get connections with her family and so many other people involved in that disaster were able to reach out to each other and find out quickly who was well, what was going on. So the idealism that she had surrounding Facebook, a lot of it, I think, stemmed from that experience. There's so many things that I don't even know where to start in this, but double standards. So, for example, Sheryl Sandberg, she of Lean In, apparently kept giving the policymakers grief because they were too slow in getting a Facebook for Children platform launched, until they missed the chance to create such a thing. So even though Sheryl herself and many of the people in management at Facebook wouldn't allow their own children to have screen time, or severely limited their screen time, never mind have access to social media. After terrorists killed about 120 people in Paris, Sheryl emailed her team that terrorism is working to Facebook's advantage. Terrorism means the conversation on privacy is basically dead, as policymakers are more concerned about intelligence/security. So it's good for Facebook's business. The UK government asks for Facebook's support against the Brexit vote. And more politicians are explicitly requesting that Facebook put its thumb on the political scale. There's Mark Zuckerberg's reaction when he learned that Facebook had a big role in Trump's first election. The Myanmar chapter is heartbreaking and infuriating. And it's like there's this theme in my reading this week that lies are used to spread fear and hate. This is in order to suppress and control people, especially groups of people like the Indigenous people in Praiseworthy and Small Ceremonies, queer people during the AIDS crisis that we saw in Run Away With Me, and in All the Parts We Exile, it's women, queers, and non-practicing Muslims in the theocratic regime in Iran. So that is all I've got for you today. Thank you so very much for watching. I always love to hear from you, so please do say hello in the comments down below, and stick around if you want to view some pom-pom making. I have a little bit of footage at the very end. And until next time, happy reading, everybody. Bye for now.